Shawn Stevenson, thank you so much for coming on my podcast, but in your studio. Thanks for coming on. It's called Save Yourself with Dr. Amy Shah, because we talk about, and I know you're all about that, really, we can't control everybody in our world, but we can control ourselves and we can save ourselves. So I'm so grateful for you to be here. If people don't know, you're the best-selling author of Sleep Smarter, and now you have the brand new cookbook, right? And what's the official name?
Eat Smarter Family Cookbook.
That's why I thought it's Eat Smarter but Family Cookbook, which is an amazing resource for people, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I wanted to start out by, first of all, thanking you so much, because I think it was about 2 years ago that I reached out to you for the first time. And I said, hey, I have a book coming out. I don't know anything about this world. I'm kind of just getting my feet wet. And you offered to get on a call with me. And you said, gave me a bunch of advice about books and being in this world. Literally, I felt like I was like a newborn in this world, a wellness world. I was just like a doctor, going to work, seeing patients, coming home. And then all of a sudden I'm in this new universe, really. And I think back to that time because honestly, so much of what you told me really set the stage for me and my path forward. And I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but I'm in like leaps and bounds ahead of what I would be if I didn't have people like you kind of helping me along the way. So thank you so much.
Oh, man. I said this to you before. You deserve it. I knew that there was something remarkable about you. Obviously, I don't get on the phone with babies very often. You being a newborn.
Yeah.
But, just
That's what I was going to say. What did you even think? Like, were you like, oh my God, this annoying person reaching out to, I mean, that's what people, that's what happens, right?
But also that we had connective tissue because you found out about me years before, when you were working on your own wellness journey.
Yes.
And that resonated with me, to see the potential impact that you can have and that you're already doing. You're putting things in place. And I just wanted to see you take off and change the world.
You really, and you know what you did? I'm sure you remember this, but that time you got on the phone and you sent voice memos to a bunch of other podcasters and was like, hey, she's going to come out to LA, and you put in a good word for me. And that meant so much because I came to LA, I did your podcast and I did a few others, and all of that kind of set the stage for everything that would come after that. And so thanks so much.
I've got the chills.
Really,
amazing.
I had to give you I think when I went to Europe this summer, I realized how connected everybody is in Europe, at least where I was at this conference. It was a medical conference, longevity and aesthetics, which we'll talk about longevity. But and everyone, their personalities, the Bulgarians, it was in Bulgaria. The Bulgarians were so connected. Like they wanted to help each other. They wanted to talk to each other. I think we in America, we live in silos and we live these very, very independent lives because that's what we've been told. We're like, just work on yourself, go. And I think we forget the power of connection. And I know that your book, the Eat Smarter Cookbook, is really about connection. What really prompted you to write that?
It's really just kind of completing the puzzle because the individuality is such an important aspect. When you were talking about that experience with the Bulgarians, I was thinking about the microbiome, right? Yeah. And just how each individual microbe has its own particular job, its own aspirations, its own desires and wishes and fears and things that it's moving away from, moving towards. We're all individuals, but we're part of this incredible collective. I really see being here on planet Earth, we're like in a glorified snow globe. We're kind of like little cells in this global body, And in America, yes, we've been more of like the individual is the way and do everything you can to lift yourself up. And that absolutely has its place. But little did we know we're missing out on really the most important part about being human, which is each other,
Yeah.
And, you come from a culture where, different lineages, different generations are often in the same house, right? And that's something we've really kind of, I'm not going to even say evolved. We've devolved and moved away from that.
Oh my gosh.
Where not only are we not in the same home, but not even in the same neighborhood, not even, now we're in different cities. Oftentimes, I know that that's the case for me, with my family. And as we move further and further away, things have become ironically more and more difficult, right? We've seen benefits with some other things. Let's not negate that.
Right.
But we need each other. And really the catalyst for writing this book was I'm a scientist. The data was too eye-opening, too mind-blowing. And I'm just like, people do not know this. And not just us getting together with the people that we love, but especially under the umbrella of food and eating together. This is something that dates back like as far as we could date back and find humans. Humans have been eating together and we've been participating together in the process of eating. So the hunting, the gathering, the food preparation, and eating together, this was really a time for being able to share knowledge, right? Before the advent of writing and books and things like that. Not too long ago, we went to Maui and they had the luau, which as I'm watching it, I'm seeing this from different eyes because, right? So they come out with the pig, of course. It's just like they're pretending that they hunted the pig, right?
Yeah.
And then they do the whole thing. They're telling stories through song and through dance. And we're seeing this kind of dramatization of something that humans have done for thousands of years, which is after we procure this real food from nature, we share this time together and we pass down information, right, to help the new generations to keep moving humanity forward. And so having this opportunity to let's circle back to that and integrate more time with family intentionally, especially with food. And I'm just going to throw this out here really quickly. One of the studies that jumped out to me initially that was just got me thinking about writing a book about this was a huge database from some researchers at Harvard who were just collecting data on family eating behaviors. And after they compiled the data, they found that when families eat together, and this is going to seem obvious, but when families eat together, they tend to eat significantly more fruits and vegetables, more nutrient-dense foods. Specifically, they found they had far more micronutrients and macronutrients that help to prevent diseases in these family members. And they ate significantly less ultra-processed foods just by eating together more often. And so it got me thinking, is this because they have time? Because they're more educated? Is that why? Because I'm always trying to poke holes in my own beliefs, right? Questioning, and this is a really important takeaway for anybody who's interested in health today, because, we can get very dogmatic about things. And so I found another study that was done on minority children, which is where I come from. When I changed my own health and when I was going to college, even I lived in Ferguson, Missouri, and they tracked the eating behavior of these children. They found that if the kids ate with their parents or their caregivers at least 4 meals per week, this could be any meal, this could be breakfast, this could be dinner, didn't matter. The children ate 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables at least 5 days a week just by eating together on those 4 occasions. But here's what the researchers noted, specifically when the TV was never or rarely on. That was the key. There's something distracting about television, our devices, and all. Our devices in a way are dividing us. And so having that focused time together is leading to better outcomes for our kids and for ourselves.
My kids, Laura, my daughter, is in the room. They get so annoyed with me because I say, even when your phone is on the table, in sight, your part of your attention is just based on not picking up the phone. So stopping your urge to look at the phone. And so you cannot focus on the people who are speaking to you if you have your phone right there. So you put it away, out of sight, out of mind, and you really are present there. And I think that what you said about the TV or smartphones, nowadays, this is the big thing. And I think when you said about the microbiome, I always think of the microbiome as one of the biggest, drivers for mind, body, and spirit health. They need other microbes. They need to interact with even though they're deep in our gut, our microbiome really benefits from being around other people's microbiomes.
It's and file sharing.
Yes. And they want to, whoever you are the sum of the people that you spend the most time with, because your microbiome is the sum of the people you spend your most time with. So think about who you're spending time with, because your microbiome is reflecting those people. And then you realize the importance of sharing meals together with people that you care about, because that, to me, oh, wow, like I could shape my microbiome based on who I'm spending time with. And vice versa. You want to share your microbiome with your children, with your family members, so that you are all benefiting from the things that you do, like athletic prowess, mood, everything comes from your microbiome.
It's that proximity,
Yeah.
you know? And I remember this statement. I first heard Tony Robbins say this, that proximity is power,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
and being close to certain things. That's how we really connected,
Yes.
you know? And the same thing holds true with this opportunity, like to intentionally put ourselves around healthy people,
Yes.
right? It's not just the fact that, you know, this isn't just a superficial thing, right? There's a statement that you're the average of the 5 people that you hang around the most. One of the most profound things that I heard, and this was from a really renowned psychiatrist, is that you're the average of the 5 nervous systems that you're around the most as well.
And 5 microbiomes.
And 5 microbiomes. Like, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. But the thing is, we're limited as human beings with our perspective in a way, because we can't see so much. Like, we have senses that are attuned to a certain reality.
Yeah.
And so we can't see all of this stuff, like these trillions of processes that are happening, you know, right here in this room. We're existing in this like cloud of microbial data, right? And recently, of course, we have a lot of fear around that, but it's one of the most healthy things and health affirming. It's kind of like having our immune system being able to do a light workout, you know, when we're able to share data, because as you know, so much of our microbiome is related to our immune system function.
100%. Yeah.
So it's just doing this around in the context of eating good food together and just being close again. And by the way, for people that are just like, well, I'm not close to my family either, you know, this includes friends too. You know, it's just not limited to, you know, the nuclear family or extended family, but now we can choose. Like, my mother-in-law, I'm about to fly her into town, like, I think next week or the next week or two. And, you know, just having that opportunity as much, and we're working to move her here.
Amazing.
Just to so she could be around. And also now data's coming out that when we have multiple generations who are in the same home, they live longer, by the way, and live more healthfully, lower rates of things like dementia, and the list goes on and on. And it doesn't necessarily mean being under the same roof, but just being in proximity to your grandkids, right? It provides a sense of purpose. And so if you don't have that, because I lost that, you know, I had, you know, I
remember you mentioned,
my grandmother was really like my first love, you know, and she passed away prematurely, as did my grandfather. And she stuck around just till I got married, you know, and he passed away, you know, a couple of years before that. And shortly thereafter, she passed away. And I was just still a kid, really. You know, I was like 26.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would love, like, every day I see her picture, and I was just like, she would love my youngest son so much, you know. But I didn't know what I know now. And actually, she passed away from overdose from medication. All right.
What
grandfather.
medication, if you don't mind me asking?
So this is tough. I mean, this was intentional.
Yeah.
Right? So she had a slew of medications that she was on, and she really died from a broken heart. You know, my grandfather passed away, and he had multiple open heart surgeries, and just, you know, he was really beaten down from that process. But early on, like when I lived with them for several years when I was a kid, I remember the switchover very clearly. Like, I remember my grandfather, he hunted, they had a garden, but he had this thing he loved, and this is the weirdest thing. He would, I've never shared this before, but he would mix up the syrup with Jiffy peanut butter.
Okay.
Right? And like mix it up into this mixture, and then put it on a plate, and then put a piece of white bread on top of that and eat it. All right. I don't know what he calls that. You know, the pop special or something. But, you know, and looking at the ingredients of that Jiffy, I mean, fully hydrogenated vegetable oil, and it's not real maple syrup. It's just like Aunt Jemima, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and here's what happened when he had, you know, high blood pressure, hypertension. His physician had my grandmother to take away all. And by the way, as I'm sharing that was like the one weird thing that I saw him have. They ate a lot of butter and, you know,
real food,
you know, the deer that he would hunt and stuff like that. Because he had just minor levels, high levels of hypertension, it took him off all fat. So she put him on a low fat diet, this is when country crock became predominant, right? Start cooking with vegetable oil. And it went from, concerning to worse, right? And then the progression just went from there. So
it's so terrible. I mean, you think about what we didn't know back then. And a lot of the things that you're saying in your cookbook and what we talk about is kind of the mistakes we've made in the last 80 to 100 years with nutrition. I mean, nutrition has gone completely haywire. It's become food-like substances. Like you're saying, these hydrogenated spreads are terrible for you, much worse than the other things that you could be putting on.
Ultra-processed food.
Ultra-processed food.
Nature of that,
it's just so terrible. Well, I want to go back to the grandparents thing. So my journey included my parents all the way because when I got pregnant, I found out the hard way that there's no maternity leave in medical residency or fellowship. And I said to my parents, I said to my dad, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I have to go back. I have only 2 weeks of vacation. And he's like, don't worry, we'll be there for you. He's like, my parents were there for me when we moved to this country. They, his mom really took care of us when we were little. And so my mom would come and stay with us for prolonged periods of time. And then lo and behold, Laura, I got pregnant with Laura about a year and a half later. And so it kind of ended up being this long period while I was in training, in residency training, that my mom was there and my dad would come on the weekends or come when he could. And then when we moved after finishing fellowship, Laura was 6 months old and my son was 2. And they said, don't worry, we got you. You have a new practice. You're starting this new world. We got you. We'll help you. We'll help the kids. We love being with them. Keeps us happy. And my dad started working remotely and helped me. And I can't tell you what an impact it had on my life. I could not do. I know people have amazing nannies and more power to them. They have family members, but having your parents there to support you and your family when they're really young and when your career's really young, it was priceless. And the fact that I would come home and my kids would be fed and bathed. It was like late in the evening and we had dinner together and then we would that was it. Like I didn't have to worry about anything. And so the power of that and the power when we talk about menopause, and I know we're going to touch on that, human women are the only species on earth that live past ovaries, meaning their ovaries die in their 50s, but they live well past that. And evolutionarily, we think because of this duty that they have such a big role in the family structure, in the community over the thousands of years, that evolutionarily they were chosen to live well past their fertility age. And so I think that's so beautiful. Like, we are meant to be taking care of our grandchildren or just the community or giving something to this world well beyond, age 45 or 50 or whenever people stop having ovulation. So I think all of that kind of fits in this role of, we are supposed to be communities. We were built this way. Evolutionarily, we were supposed to be this way. And the more we pull ourselves away from that, the worse it gets.
Yeah. As women are taking care of us, as my grandmother's taking care of me, the environment, we need to be taking care of her as well.
Yeah.
And respecting her and providing an environment for her to thrive so that relationship can continue, but that's really one of the issues today. And, again, not to be too gloomy about this, because I'm definitely, my personality was such that it's part of the issue. I lived with my grandma for a while, but it's because my mom, was just kind of struggling, and I would stay at her house sometimes on the weekends, but it was just really, violent environment, the neighborhood that we were in, it's gangs, there's violence, there's, drug use, alcoholism, violence in the household, all those things. And, even being in that environment, there's still an opportunity, it's just because of being in that environment, I became more self-centered and like protective of myself. So I cut myself off.
Yeah.
And I felt so much more happy and sovereign being alone.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm saying all that to say, that I definitely had lone wolf syndrome,
Totally.
to a high degree. And even getting into this field, like, it was shocking to me when the first person that I helped, I was still in college and I became a personal trainer at the university gym. And I couldn't believe I went from like being so focused on self to being of service to other people. I've even lost myself in that too,
Yeah.
because you could swing this pendulum
Yeah.
either way. Now, finding that happy medium, which is appropriate for so much in life, the yin and yang, it was me having the revelation, thankfully, that I get to create that family, right? So, but I had the story, and I'm speaking to those people who feel like, well, that I just don't have that. And so it is, right? If that is your belief and that's what you're focused on, that's what you're gonna have. I opened myself up to, like, I'm so excited about my mother-in-law coming out here. There's so
Yeah.
many like mother-in-law jokes
Right,
about how there's
right.
not, it's not
Yeah.
a vibe. I love her so much. She's really my greatest teacher in this field of health. But I intentionally, in a way, some of this kind of happened along the way, because even when she came into my life, I was still keeping a distance. I didn't accept how much she loved me. My first book that I self-published way back, probably 15 years ago, she spent, and I'm gonna say it, she spent $10,000 of her savings and bought those books
Wow.
from the printer. Because at the time, again, there wasn't like this distribution, all this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
We needed the inventory, right? She invested in me,
Wow.
and
What
since
a
then,
gift.
I've taken the best care. Like, she's been all over the world. I've been able to do these amazing things for her, and part of the reason that I've worked so hard in this field is to make her proud, and we've got and this is a crazy thing. I'm sharing this with you. I haven't really spoke this
Yeah.
out loud, but many of my friends are like significantly older than me, like 20, 30 years. But these are like, they're like grandparents, right? They're like
Yeah.
grandparents for my kids, and it's so amazing. Like, you can create this no matter where you are right now, but we've got to start. We've got to make it more intentional to spend time, especially today. Life is not slowing down
No.
anytime soon. Technology is getting more and more integrated into things, but we need each other. We need that file sharing. We need those inputs, around the dinner table, especially for our kids. So there was a study published in Pediatrics that looked at family eating behavior and obesity and eating disorders in kids. And I'm a big minimum effective dose person too. Like, okay, we know we got data, but how many times do we need to do this?
Yeah.
And they found the minimum was 3 meals per week. Those children eating with their parents or caregivers, 3 meals per week, significantly decreased their development of obesity and disordered eating. All right. So we know that it's protective for kids. It's protective for us as well. A great analysis was done with tech workers at IBM. And what they did was they tracked their job satisfaction, productivity, stress levels. And they found that if those parents were able to get home, quote, get home for dinner, right? Home in time for dinner, their work morale stayed high, productivity stayed high, stress stayed manageable. But as soon as obligations cut into their ability to spend time with their family after work, productivity goes down,
Interesting.
job satisfaction plummets, and most importantly, stress skyrockets. Being with each other helps us to metabolize stress. And that's one of the most overlooked aspects of it.
I have the perfect ad for your book. I saw this social media graphic, and maybe I'll send it to you when I get a chance. U.S. population spends the least amount of time at tables, meaning eating at tables, and has the highest rates of obesity. All the countries that spend the least amount of time at tables. And the countries that spend the most amount of time at tables have the healthiest overall populations. And it just means, like, you think about it, wait, if they're sitting at a table, aren't they eating more? Aren't they eating more, like drinking more, eating more desserts or whatever? But no, if you think about it, that's what we think, right? We think if we sit down and eat, we're going to overeat, or we're going to, at least a lot of us think we're too busy. We got to just eat on the go. You got to have a protein shake or bar, like that's healthy. But real health is actually sitting down and looking at the food you're eating, or conversing with someone on a table. And I think that's the best ad for your book that you could ever have, is like, hey, look, we need to understand the statistics. This is opposite of what you've been taught for the last whatever number of years. For me, growing up in med school, in training, I always thought it was a waste of time to go out to dinner with friends or family. Just thought, oh my God, I'd rather read, be studying with my food. And it's just the opposite. It's so crazy that the people that spend the most time at tables, the countries that spend the most, they're the healthiest, right? Like, and we're in the drive-throughs, we're eating on the go. I don't know. Have you ever been to Japan?
Listen, I just text my wife this.
I'm going to give you my itinerary.
Before I came in here, all right? I haven't been. I just text her. There was a great snippet from Anthony Bourdain, and he talked obviously with the most incredible chefs from every country, you know, the most notable countries for food, and just asking them if they had a choice, the top French chef, the top chef in Italy, you know, where would you live and eat for the rest of your life if you can only live in one place and eat the food for the rest of your life? And he's like, most of them said Japan.
I'm telling you, it's right up your alley, because one of the things, they don't follow American culture as closely as so many of the other countries that we often visit, right? And one of the things I noticed, and I know you'll notice all these nutritional things too, because you're in this world, I noticed that there was no to-go. Like, you could not get a to-go. There's no trash cans anywhere, first of all. There's no to-go cups. There's no to-go plates. Nobody's eating on the go. And everyone walks there. So it's not like you're in your car eating. And I thought that was so strange, because in America, we're all on the go all the time. Almost everything is on the go, right? Even when you have kids, you know, you're just telling me about your son's tournaments. Like, you're going to these tournaments, you're getting something on the run, they're getting something on the run, right? Like, that's our culture. And to go somewhere where they were like, no, we don't have it to go, or you have to eat it right there. Like, if you order food, like, they just give it to you and you're supposed to stand there or sit on this little stool, finish it, and then go on your way. Like, how crazy is that?
You got to slow down.
Yeah.
And also, and this is when, you know, your phone has got to be listening to you. For it to send me that, I'm watching Shogun on FX/Hulu with my wife right now as well, which is based in Japan. And then I get that and I send it to my wife like, hey, we should probably go. And also, again, just looking at the data, their obesity rate is near 5% versus almost 50% here. It's really remarkable.
They have some blue zone. They have a blue zone there too.
Exactly. Yeah. And just looking at these principles, like what are those ingredients? It's not just the diet. The diet matters, absolutely. But what's not talked about, unfortunately, is how diverse the diets are in these different blue zones. All right. The consistent thing, movement, and the thing that ties it all together is community in all of these places. It is the standout thing. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with the director of the longest running longitudinal human study on longevity. Like, what are the ingredients that show specifically what makes humans live longer? And he was like, yes, exercise matters. Not smoking matters. But the thing that stood out far and away was the quality of your relationships, having warm, as he called it, warm social bonds. And from his data, and he's the fourth director, it's like an 80-year study to get the baton passed to them. And I like him because he's also skeptical, you know? And so he was trying to find, what's the mechanism? And the mechanism that stands out with a good amount of data is that it helps, again, to metabolize stress. Just knowing that somebody is there for you, that has your back at the end of a process, at the end of a day, or just, you know, to share good times with. Having another human being to experience these things, or human beings, is so good for our brain and for our nervous system, our endocrine system. And this was what was also one of the standout reasons in the book. When you said about the tables, it's so fascinating, by the way. In the book, I shared that the dinner table acts as a unifier. That's what it really is. It's a unifier. And we know that just being with each other, we're producing different chemistry. But now so much science, I've been talking about this for 10 years. So much science is coming out now about oxytocin. And I was talking about in the context of sleep quality, 10 years ago. But now it's, getting all these different nicknames, bonding hormone, cuddle hormone, love hormone. It's far more than that. It does support bonding with humans, but it's really, and I don't want to I don't want to use this word, but I'm going to use it, but it's really an antidote to stress in many ways. It's a strong word to use that, but this is just what's showing up in the data. It's one of the few hormones that can really counteract the activity of cortisol, right? And cortisol is complicated. It's not bad. It's just, it can get out of balance, right? And so having a boost of oxytocin really can help to neutralize cortisol abnormality in the body. And it's like a hack that has been there throughout our evolution. All we got to do is just be around each other, hug somebody, share a meal together, and you're going to get these benefits.
That's the purpose of oxytocin. We think is to promote those behaviors. And so our body does that to promote more of that, because if you feel good, you're going to do more of it. And that helps us evolve as, as humans. Okay. You've been in this world now for what, over 20 years?
22 years here in about a month.
So 22 years.
Crazy.
What if somebody was like coming to this brand new and they're like, I can't do 1,000 things. I can't do all the things I need to do for a better health, better life, better, internal environment. What would be kind of the top things, maybe 3 to 5 things you'd say, hey, listen, I know you hear everything, you hear all these things, but you got to start with these 3 things.
Oh, this is tough. So when I found success working with people as a clinician, it was personalizing things.
Yeah.
Right. So the generalities I'm going to give them, because for most people they are going to work, but you still got to base things on your unique circumstances, because we all need a little more, a little less of some things at different times. With that being said, across the board, number 1 is shifting your ratio of ultra processed foods. All right. So eat real food. Eat real food. If you just focus on most of your meals consist of real food, and of course, if you come in contact, with the bowl of Lucky Charms or whatever the case might be every now and then, so be it. Like, we live in the world, there's weird, fun stuff to eat out here, but eat real food stuff. And this isn't, I'm not talking about, matter of fact, let's share where we are with ultra processed foods. And I've been talking about this for several years now, but so about 3 years ago, an analysis came out on the BMJ, and it found that we eat more ultra processed food than anybody. Big surprise. So the average American eats about 60% of their diet is ultra processed foods. Another study that came out just a couple of years ago was published in JAMA, looking at ultra processed food consumption by our children. And it tracked from 1999, the average child was eating already 62% ultra processed foods. And by 2018, that number had risen to almost 70%. All right. So most of our children's diet is fake food. So just to clarify also, when I'm saying ultra processed food, and I see some of my colleagues are making this distinction, thankfully, because I came out of the gate saying, hey, we've been processing food for a long time.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not about processing.
So you want to understand the distinction, right? Like, if we're making olive oil from olives, that food is still radically healthy. If we're making some pasta sauce from tomatoes, right? If you're cooking your food, you're processing the food if you're cooking it. That's not the issue. Ultra processed foods are newly invented chemical complexes that, for example, I mentioned Lucky Charms earlier. There was a time, there's some parts of that bowl of Lucky Charms that far away, in a galaxy far, far away, it was made from bits of corn.
Yeah.
All right. There's some corn involved. All right. But it went through so much processing, so many different chemical additives. And this is the big thing. This stuff doesn't show up on that label.
Yeah.
As you're reading that label for that box of cereal, it might have, 12 ingredients. There are hundreds or even thousands of chemicals that are involved in processing that food that are not on that label. And many of these compounds are now affirmed to be carcinogens, obesogens. They're banned in many countries, but here in the United States, we're just oblivious to the fact that that's happening when we're eating this food. We're getting, and it might even be micro amounts, but we're consuming all of these different newly invented chemicals, food dyes, solvents, hexane to be able to extract the vegetable oils, and the list goes on and on. And we're really eating a chemical soup. It's not real food. All right. So ultra processed foods are things that you can't recognize where they come from, period. Like if you were to give a box of Pop-Tarts to, somebody, a Maasai, a person in the Maasai tribe. My mother-in-law and my wife, they're from Kenya.
Yeah.
But the Maasai, they're some of the healthiest people on earth, and they have a very strange diet. They have the cows and whatever, the blood and the dairy and whatnot. But I don't know if you saw this recently. They're being studied because they can jump so high. They have freakishly high jumpers and athletes. But if you were to present now, I mean, I'm sure some guys in the tribe have some smartphones now. So but maybe like 20 years ago, present them with a box of Pop-Tarts. Like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
They would have no clue. No. Lucky Charms, no clue. Doritos, no clue.
How do you minimize that? So you're saying that's number one, right? Minimize that. So practically, how do you minimize that?
It is, the simplicity makes it complicated.
Yeah.
All right. And it is as simple as when you eat your meals, just asking the question, can I recognize where this came from? Right. So if you're having your breakfast and it's some eggs and fruit, or some avocado or something like that, or even toast, right? Even if you're eating some sourdough bread, for example, it's just a couple of steps from being wheat. All right. This isn't that far removed from that. So it's still like it's processed food. It can be a little bit more refined, but it still fits that category of being a real food. With that said, there are degrees with that when it comes to bread, but just asking, is this real food, right? A step or two from where its origins are. With that said, we can take those foods and make some incredible meals with them, right? So I just saw my friend Michael Beckwith, who's another one of those people who's a mentor for me. He's a couple decades my senior. But last time he was over at my house, we made this amazing enchilada casserole for him. That's in the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook, by the way. And, there's a vegetarian, vegan version, and there's a version where you could add different protein or whatever. But it's so good. It's so ridiculously good. But it's got all these different real food ingredients, right? So it's got, one of the secret ingredients that gives its body is sweet potatoes, right? Oh, wow. But it's like layered into this enchilada version, with different vegetables and things like that. And again, you can have your protein of choice. It tastes like a cross between like a pizza and enchilada. It's fire. It's amazing. But we could take those real food ingredients and make some amazing food experiences, So that's the principle. That's the modus operandi. I was just asking, like, can I recognize where this came from? And leaning a little bit into simplicity for our meals. And with that said, you can have a little of the fun stuff. Just make sure that you get your real food in there in that meal, and sprinkle in a little bit of whatever it might be. I'm thinking of conjuring up so many inappropriate foods that I'm gonna say, but like, because there's some crazy stuff out here now. I mean, I don't know. So when I was a kid, my favorite cereal was Fruity Pebbles. Yeah. But now there's like Fruity Pebble Crispy Treats or Rice Krispie Treats. There's Fruity Pebbles Donuts. There's so many monstrosities that can be created with these delicious. And by the way, this is the thing. They're delicious. They're chemically these intelligent scientists created them to be incredibly delicious. And I actually know how it works now. Yeah. And just understanding that stuff exists, and we are humans living in, this time right now, and there's all kinds of fun stuff. Humans are driven to eat tasty things. We have colleagues who are very much in the camp of like, eat to live, don't live to eat. And I get it, but we're hardwired. Our biology is driven to eat delicious things. Every creature really is drawn towards things that taste good to them. Have you ever thought about like, why does a certain animal eat a certain thing? Another part of that though, and we have this as well as humans, but it's kind of calloused now, is we're also drawn to foods that heal us and support us. There's this phenomenon called post-ingestive feedback, right? So when we eat a food, our cells, this infinite intelligence, we're starting to understand, but it's basically keeping track of what we got from that food, right? So if I ate some dark cherries, my body is keeping tabs on I got some vitamin C. I got some anthocyanins. I've got some melatonin in a food. That's interesting. So your body's like taking notes on all this stuff. And when we eat that food, it's connecting those nutrients with certain flavors, right? And so if we would become deficient in these things or maybe sick or need certain things, we'd have a craving to go and seek those things out in our environment, right? So post-ingested feedback, and there's great studies that are done on this, but that phenomenon is for humans has really been screwed up because of ultra-processed foods, because you could take that cherry flavor, right?
Now you want a cherry Coke.
Right.
Just kidding.
You could take it, right. You take it, a gas chromatograph can isolate the chemistry that makes that cherry flavor. It doesn't have to be exact, but like now we can add that cherry flavor to things that are not cherry. And so all of this biochemistry is just screwed up and we don't know what we crave anymore, like that inner intelligence. But as you start to eat more real food, and that's what I tell people, like it's difficult for me because I just listen to my body. You know, my body knows what to eat, you know? And of course, like I'll add in things proactively here or there, but I really just kind of know and have a feeling for what is good for me right now.
It's so interesting because it's so hard. Intuitive eating is really hard if you're eating a lot of ultra-processed foods, but when you decrease the amount of ultra-processed foods you eat, then you can kind of lean into that intuition. I think that's where it gets confusing for people. Yeah. So if that's number one, do you have a second one, or is that the main, like if you had to start somewhere, that's where you would start?
Number two would be to prioritize your sleep, you know, and of course I've done a lot of work on this, and I'm grateful that this has become kind of part of popular culture now, sleep wellness, but we're still not doing it. You know, so many people, because we've got this curveball of technology being more invasive in our lives. And, you know, and I'm thinking about, you know, this publisher has been reaching out about doing a revised edition of Sleep Smarter. But just
smartphone edition.
Yeah, like it is a serious issue. Now we have data on what it is. Like I shared data on it back 8 years ago when I wrote it, 7-8 years ago. And the, you know, researchers at Harvard finding how it suppresses melatonin, increases cortisol before bed and whatnot. But now it's like there's more data on this. It's not just this melatonin cortisol connection, but it's like dopamine, it's like noradrenaline and adrenaline. It's just like all of this chemistry. And you could be tired. You could be physiologically exhausted and even pass out. But you're not going to go through your sleep cycles efficiently if you're on your device before you go to bed. Like it just really gums up the system.
What about those people, and I work with a lot of women, right, that prioritize their sleep because they know how much it means to them the next day. But they wake up in the middle of the night, say 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. This is like a huge question I get all the time. I was curious about your thoughts on that.
Why they're waking up?
Or like what they can do to stop that.
So this is an incredible question. And it's multifaceted because everybody's different, you know. This could be anything ranging from, you know, some hormonal things going on, you know, maybe for some reason cortisol's kicking on at that point. And we need to look at like helping to smooth out your cortisol rhythm. This could be stress, you know, but not just cortisol related, but like psychological, you're processing things and something is like, quote, keeping you up at night.
Yeah.
This could be blood sugar issues. You know, this could be nutrient deficiencies. There's so many different things to consider here, but most importantly, the number one solution practically, we can address all those things. It's just to not be so hard on yourself, you know, because we can become neurotic about like, I need to get this amount of sleep.
I know,
What we know now is that, yes, sleep mode is absolutely, it's a superpower. It's the most anabolic state humans can be in. But just slowing down, meditating, just breathing, you know, even if you wake up, just taking time and just knowing things are well and taking the opportunity to, you know, do some breathing exercises and to decompress, maybe focus on some things that, and it's tough if you're going through something, you know, maybe that's what's keeping you up. It's just to be able to put your attention on things that you're grateful for, or, you know, the good things that have happened in your life that have gotten you to where you are, those things that maybe you didn't think you'd be able to make it through that you did, you know, just being able to take a little bit more control of your emotions in that moment and know that meditation is also very anabolic, right? So we can get some of those benefits of sleep just by you focusing on your breathing, because that's going to help you to stay in that like parasympathetic, rest and digest.
Yeah, 'cause like that non-sleep rest, that's really important too if you can't go back to sleep.
When I mentioned nutrient deficiencies, really quickly, you can have the most fancy pants mattress ever created. You could have the blackout curtains. You could have all of the gadgets and the gizmos. If you're deficient in the nutrients that build your sleep-related hormones and neurotransmitters, you're going to have problems sleeping. So what are some of those really quickly? And I call them good sleep nutrients. One of the most profound, surprisingly, but it does so much, which it shouldn't be that surprising, is vitamin C. Right. So there was a study done in PLOS One that found that folks who, of course, deficient in vitamin C, they were having more interrupted sleep. They were waking up more often. And by getting more vitamin C nutrition in, helped to resolve that. Another one is, and there's so many I'm thinking about right now, but I'll just share omega-3s. I know you talk about omega-3s quite a bit, especially for your sleep quality. And actually, there was researchers at Oxford that found that it helps to make more efficient sleep cycles and reduce wake after sleep onset. So reduces waking up at night. So omega-3s are important in that. And I'll share one more. And again, there's several. And I talk about all of them back in the, Eat Smarter. Actually, in the new cookbook as well, I talk about them with different foods. And another one would be a precursor to making melatonin, to making serotonin, which is this precursor, which is tryptophan. All right. And so tryptophan, a lot of people think just turkey or like Thanksgiving, but there's a ton of different foods you can get tryptophan in as well. And but again, if you're deficient in the precursors that help to make your neurotransmitters and hormones like serotonin and melatonin, your body's just going to struggle to make them. So having ample amounts of tryptophan, omega-3s, vitamin C will all be helpful in improving sleep quality.
Okay, what's number 3?
Oh, this is so hard. Okay.
If there is another, there could just be 2.
I'll tell you what, but this number 3 for me is what controls the other 2. All right. And it's focusing on our relationships.
Yeah. Connection.
That's really what it is. Because the mechanism that he identified, my friend, colleague from Harvard, is to help to metabolize stress. But something that I've identified, and I know we're going to have data to affirm this, is that our relationships control what we eat. Huge influence on what we're eating, because our relationships are our exposure, right? So many things that I didn't know were food, or that I know is food, were because of the relationships that I have that introduce those things. And that goes on. We think that as adults, we're not subject to peer pressure. We're just big adult, tweens, like we're still heavily influenced by the people in our lives. The same thing, with our choices in, exercise, the same thing with our sleep habits are heavily. My wife is the biggest factor in my sleep. Yeah. All right. And we don't talk about this stuff enough. So that's really, for me, what it is very practical. Our relationships have a huge influence over every other health factor that we can consider. So focusing on building healthy social bonds. And a big question is, how the hell do we do that?
Yeah.
A good first step is just scheduling time and making sacred time for you to have meals with people that you care about through the week. That minimum effective dose in the research, 3 meals a week, right? So make it sacred. Put it on your calendar like you put everything else. We got family dinner, maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever the case might be, or brunch on Sunday, or you schedule the dinner with your friends. You get everybody together for a Saturday, Saturday lunch or something, and make it sacred, because not only are you going to get all the benefits that we're talking about, but when you're doing that, there's so many other benefits that come along with, having that quality time with people that you care about.
I think that's so, so important. I think people don't put that number 3. I think they would expect you to say maybe number 1 and number 2, but number 3 is still really, really surprising to people. I could go on and on, but we have so much more to talk about. We're going to have you on again. I'm so appreciative of you. And like I said, I can't thank you enough for all the good advice that you've been giving me over the years. And I can always call you up and you send me these long voice memos that it's like a podcast, and I get to hear what you have to say about the topic. And so many times when we've connected over meals, or at least the time that we did, it was so special. So I want to thank you so much for being on, and we will have you on again. Thanks.
Awesome. This was awesome. I appreciate you.
Thank you.